Should be good to go in 2 seconds. Monday morning, baby. Let's do this fucking thing. Stream's up, ready to go. Let's see that sound. Alright, sound is so much better. We got the new microphone on. Oh, let me edit the Facebook post real quick. Okay. Posting. Alright, I got Monday morning, so we're still like getting ourselves together a little bit here. Weekend was a weird one. I spent a good chunk of time though working on the microphone's fucked up. Spent a good chunk of time working on the website. We're just coming along. And all the like I'm building like a bunch of little tools to help me manage the channel and stuff. So we made good progress on that, and I think that at some point I'll probably show that work. I wish I'd streamed it because it was very streamable. So yeah, good weekend. Okay weekend. Kind of weird. Still got some weird stuff going on in my personal life that I'm like thinking about and dealing with, in the vein of like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie High Fidelity, but sort of the what does it all mean kind of conversations. I've been having some of those with some people in my life. And kind of putting myself back together again after a rough couple of months there. But yeah, this weekend was all right. Today I want to talk about something I think it's probably one of the most important things that I could talk about for somebody learning how to code, or someone who's looking for getting a job in software engineering industry. And it's a question that I've been asked about quite a bit by the few people who are like asking me for advice on like how to get their career going and shit. And it's kind of a tough question to answer because it's just different for everyone. But the overall topic we talk about is how to apply for how to get your first job as a software engineer. And so the premise is you've been teaching yourself to code for a few months, you're really into it, and wondering like what the next step is. When do you start applying? When is it too early to apply at some point? What are like the go live sort of checklist things that you need to have dialed in before you can even apply to jobs? And like everything else I'm going to be doing on this channel, I'm going to be talking mostly from personal experience. I've done my own research on this stuff, and different people will tell you different things, but I think most people are off, or doing it wrong, or not doing it smart, or I'm just going to talk about the way that I did it and the way that I suggest other people would. So let's say you decided you want to change your career in software, or you wanted to change your career, you want to start doing software stuff. First step, obviously, is to teach yourself how to code. And to see, really, when you start teaching yourself, like that first month when you start learning, you shouldn't be trying to do anything more than see if this is something that you can do for 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. And the reason I say that is because I know there's like I should post this. There's this kind of well-known, it's almost like a meme at a certain point. It's well-known like YouTube channel. This guy made about 6 or 7 videos, and the videos were like, first day at my boot camp, why I'm doing my boot camp, second week at my boot camp, first month at my boot camp, and everything's like, and it seems like everything's going well if you just look at the titles of the YouTube videos. And then the last one, and I don't think he's posted anything since, is why I decided to quit my boot camp like 2 months in. And the reason he quit is because he doesn't want to sit in front of a computer all day every day, and he feels like that's just not him. And I would say that is going to be true for a lot of people. To do this, you're going to have to sit in front of a computer for a good chunk of your life. And if that's not something that you're comfortable with doing, then this isn't for you. And you're probably, and there's a number of other similar issues that you might find when you start learning programming that you might find it's not for you. So like don't take a boot camp before you know how to code. Don't sign up. Don't drop $10,000 to $15,000 for a boot camp before you know anything about how to code, because you could just be wasting your money when you find out halfway through that boot camp this isn't for you. So the first month, you really just want to go all in, but you need to like explore and see if this is for you first before you keep going. Because if it's not, then you're only spinning your wheels, and there's a ton of other careers and things that you should probably consider. You're going to be competing. If you are somebody who's doing this and you find you don't really like it, but you kind of do, keep in mind that you'll be competing with nut jobs like me who love this shit more than anything and are going to be like, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage to some extent. So you want to make sure you like it. And let's say you did your first month, I would recommend, if you're starting out, just go to freecodecamp.com or .org or whatever it is and go through their curriculum. That's how I started. It's free. The curriculum is phenomenal. And it's, in my opinion, by a large margin, best way to start learning how to code. So let's say you did that. You did that for a month, and then maybe you took a boot camp, or maybe you just kept teaching yourself. Maybe you built some projects, but maybe not. But you're like 3 to 5 months in, and you got a pretty good handle on shit. You know how to write HTML, you know how to write CSS. If I'm assuming this is for front end specifically, but pretty similar for back end shit too. But let's say you're learning front end. You did, free code camp, you did all the stuff. You know how to write HTML pretty well, CSS, JavaScript. You've written maybe a couple decent sized projects, even though they're not like great, or they're just sort of like, basic shit. Man, I wonder if I should actually, we can actually even put together like a little checklist of things of like, if you're doing front end, things you should know before your first job. That might be a good idea. I wish I had written this beforehand, but I didn't. So we'll just go with it. Just cleaning some stuff up so I can get an editor up here. And this is just, again, all this stuff that I'm going to be talking about is very much so my personal opinion, but I think I'm dead on with this shit, to be honest with you. So, and we'll get pretty nitty with this. So what should you know about code to get your first front-end dev job? And the first thing, obviously, you should know basic CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And we can go into the specifics. For CSS, you gotta know the selectors. You don't have to know every single like little property, because you won't. I don't ever. HTML you don't have to know too much here. HTML gets more complicated than people think it does, but when you're first starting out, you just need to, basic HTML stuff. You don't need to know shit about accessibility to get your first job, although that's fine. That's nice if you do, but generally speaking, you're not going to be tested or in your interview too much on anything except for JavaScript for the most part. So that's what you want to focus on. For JavaScript, things you want to know are like, you need to know how to fetch data. So you need to know probably using any library, whether that's Axios or Native Fetch or anything. Native Fetch, Axios, XHR, anything like that. You should have you should be able to go into an interview, and if they ask you, like a common interview thing might be fetch this resource, which is an array, like it's a list of items, it's an array of shit, and then display each one. Something like that is like, that's a pretty basic interview thing that you might be asked. So you should know, like, without looking up every little piece, maybe a little bit, but you should be able to do that. Fetching data is huge. You should probably, for sure, anywhere you're applying, if you're doing front end, they're going to be using a front end framework. So it's probably helpful to know one of these guys and to target them when you're looking for jobs, and probably React is what you want to know. You should know like basic Git, really basic Git, but like really basic. You don't know, like my first job, I knew very little about Git. I fucked it up for my first few months there, like getting merge conflicts with myself. So you don't really need to know too much. You're not going to be, like, it won't come up in your interview more often than not. And then for JavaScript, for more specific JS stuff, you should know like array methods, which are going to be including .map, .filter, and .reduce are the main ones, but the other ones are pretty good, like .sum and .every and all that shit are useful too. What else? I want to say like async await promises, but you don't have to. So I'll put that here, async await promises. But this one, promises took me like years to really understand. They're just weird. Like when you're first starting out, it doesn't really make sense. You're just copying the syntax and saying fuck it, and that's fine. Or using like a callback structure is totally fine. You have to get too wrapped up in this shit. And if you're applying for like a junior role, they're not going to grill you on this shit. But then otherwise, you should know, I don't know, basic shit. You should know how, like, have an understanding what is Node, NPM. You should be able to do things like render lists, tables, like be able to dynamically render lists, tables, and other elements. Let's see. Responsiveness, maybe? Like mobile responsiveness? But this is a tough one because you should have an idea of mobile responsiveness in this shit. But like, man, if you could write a calculator in JavaScript and a weather app in JavaScript, then you're pretty fucking close to knowing like the things you need to know for your first job. I would say you probably need to know more than that, but not that much more. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to know every little thing. And even like, let me make sure chat's up too. Okay. You're just not going to know every little thing, and you kind of want. Man, it's hard to think about this. I probably should have wrote down. I might write like a better list than this when I sit down and think about it. This was kind of impromptu, but you like 3 months of doing JavaScript every day, 3 to 5 months, and you'll be solid. You'll know enough stuff, especially if you're building projects and shit like that. Oh, you should probably understand APIs to some extent. Let's say how to consume APIs, and so you like to do something like that. You really want to like have a good personal project going. I know that's like the most common sort of. Need more caffeine. It's really common for when people are starting out and they look for advice. Like if you look for YouTube, how to get your first job, it's really common for someone to say like, the advice you get is going to be build a personal project or contribute to open source. Something is probably going to be one of those two things, which is great advice, sure. Problem is contributing to open source is not trivial. It's hard. You probably have to be pretty seasoned dev to actually do it in a way that's like helpful. If you do like find a good open source project to work on, that's fucking insane. That's phenomenal for a resume, especially for like a first person, someone with no experience. If you have like, if I'm looking at your resume and it says that you're a contributor to some like NPM library that's downloaded over a couple thousand times, that's pretty fucking impressive to me. But that's really hard. Like for myself, I couldn't do that when I first started out. So the second option is to make a personal project. And people tend to get caught up on like what to make, and I think that they don't see, because you don't really know anything, you don't understand what's like what's possible. Even it might be hard to come up with your first personal project, but it's definitely and it's not necessary. I didn't have I had kind of a project. I made like this big old. There's a video game called Hearthstone. I just made a big website for that. That was like Hearthstone's a card game. It's like Magic the Gathering, so it was like a database of cards that you could search for and build decks and shit like that. And there was some other cool stuff in there, and that was my first. That was like my boot camp final project, and that was my like the project that I kind of used on my resume. So yeah, having a good sized project is good, and that let's have like personal project. And so that can either be like an NPM library, which is also, again, I think that's hard to do if you don't really know. Like, you have to know what problems exist before you can start writing solutions to those problems. And if you're just starting out, NPM is like, it's a compendium of solutions. Like, all these libraries are solutions for some things. They're solutions for problems. And when you're starting out, you don't know what you're looking for. You know what the problems are. So an NPM library is hard. Just build a website for something you're interested in. So if you like video games, if you like baseball, build some like advanced stat analytic display bullshit for baseball or something. And ideally something like this has like user auth, it's front end framework, probably React. And yeah, and just basic CRUD operations. So that's create, read, update, delete. Just a basic, like, very basic website. It doesn't have to be the fucking shit. I'll think more about this. I'm definitely feeling a little off today. I had so many more thoughts on this last night when I was thinking about it, but this is fine. You do need something to like bring to your interview to talk about and shit, and like building projects is where you'll get better as a developer too. I don't think you get like there's sites like Code Wars and Code Signal, which are these sites that you go to and they basically they'll give you like an algorithmic-y sort of problem to solve in a coding language of your choice. So it might be something like, here's an array of numbers, build a function that will add up all of the numbers and return that value. Or it'll be like, here's an array of strings. If any string has a letter X in it, remove that from the array and return the array. And those websites are useful when you're first starting out to learn basic like JavaScript array methods or just JavaScript in general. But it's not like going to teach you how to build software. You need to actually like build shit. Your very first project should be a weather app, probably. That was my first thing that I built. And then like the calculator or whatever. FreeCodeCamp has a list of projects to build out, and I would highly, highly recommend just doing those first. When you put your resume together. So let's say, okay, you know all this shit that I put here. You know you can build a website, you're comfortable in it, and also I'll mention this, if you're picking React or Angular, pick React. If you're first starting out, 100% React, no question. Has the most longevity of all these other frameworks. 2, it's probably the most prolifically used at this point by a large margin, I think. And 3, React is pretty dope. It's a little tricky, but so is Vue and Angular. Angular even more so. Angular's fucking massive, and people are really moving away from everything except React. I'll throw Svelte in here, but really. And you could start learning, like, I should really put together a timeline of shit. I do want to get to, we're already like 25 minutes in, and I do want to get to the interview portion, and I'll save the topic for another day. I'll put together like a roadmap of shit that you should, like a roadmap of things to do when you're learning how to code to get your first job. I'll start thinking about that this week. That'll be my stream goal this week. I have 2 stream goals this week. I'm all over the place right now. 2 stream goals this week. The first one is to publish the website and to actually put it. I registered the domain, so we just have to put it up. That'll be easy. And the second one is a roadmap to being a developer. There's also, let me see if I can find this. There's a really, really good flow chart. You could just, I'll put this out somewhere, maybe in the comment or in like the description for this video, but there's like, this is sort of a very, very basic, not actually, this isn't basic. This is sort of like learning front end topics and stuff, and just sort of a flow chart. There's a ton of shit in here that's extra. You should know like these things here to some extent. You really don't have to know anything about DNS, domain names, or hosting. Basic stuff about browsers, HTTP, sure. Semantic HTML, sure. This is just basic HTML. Forms and validations. Chances are your first job, you're going to be building a fuckload of forms and validation. That's like half the fucking internet. So yeah, get good at forms, build some forms. Conventions and best practices, whatever the fuck that means. There really isn't. Different places have different best practices. Accessibility, you do not need to know for your first job. I would cut that shit out. SEO basics, don't learn that for your first job either. CSS, learn the basics. Yeah, you don't really need to know. Yeah, you should have like, I guess this little box here with like floats, positioning, display, like these little specifics in CSS, these sort of fundamental concepts. Yeah, you should know this stuff for sure. But like I suck with CSS grid and Flexbox. I would say you don't have to know that. Box model, I always get confused by this shit. I would say also in my career, I've written thousands or tens of thousands of lines of JavaScript. I've written very, very little CSS. So much of what I do, and that just might be how my career's taken shape, but CSS has just not been a big thing. It's a pain in the ass when it comes up, and I feel very comfortable in it. But generally speaking, it's just not as big. JavaScript's what you want. And here, syntax and basic, sure. Basic JavaScript. The DOM manipulation stuff, sure. Like this is like inevitable. I think it's just part of front end. And then fetch API and Ajax. This is huge. I think this is like, I guess this in conjunction with DOM manipulation, this is like front end at its core. ES6 is just the like modern JavaScript syntax. You should know ES6. You should know arrow functions. You should know constant let, for of loops, async await, those kinds of things. All that ES6 goodness. And you should start doing that like immediately. This stuff's extra. You really don't need to know how like prototypes work, to be honest with you. Hoisting's sort of a bullshit concept. This is more like, this is deeper stuff. Event bubbling, you don't really need to know shit about that. Strict mode, you don't need to know anything about. Scope is just, you'll get a feel for that as you learn more about JavaScript. Basic Git. You don't need to know any of these specifically. You'll probably be using GitHub when you first start out. You don't really need to know about CORS issues. You don't really need to know about HTTPS. Yeah, you need to know about package managers, but that shit's really easy. That's like, you don't need to like read too much. And now you're getting into like real extra shit at this point. I didn't know anything about testing when I first started. So I don't think you do either. And keep in mind, this is all for like getting your first junior entry level role. If you want to go above and beyond and get something else, yeah, you probably have to know a ton more, and that just takes time. But let's say you know all this shit. You know all this stuff. You know how to, be a front end. You know how to write front end code. How do you get your first job now? You have no experience. And this is a question that people have asked me a bunch. Most of the time, people are ready before they think they are. You're probably like, you almost can't apply too early. You have to think of applying for jobs as like, it costs nothing to apply. You lose nothing. You only gain experience at like, if even it like, either they're not going to send you anything, which is going to happen 90% of the time. So fuck it. Even if you have a good resume, 90% of jobs aren't going to hit you back, especially if you have no experience. But it costs you it costs you like, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to call you and you interview and don't do good on the interview, but now you know more about the interview process. So you really, like, you lose nothing by applying. So my angle is apply early, like 3 to 5 months in. Start thinking about applying to jobs. There's no harm in it. Like, you're not going to, like, send your resume to a company. They've seen your resume, they're not interested, and now there's one less company out there that might hire you, and now there's like a limited pool of options. There's a massive abundance of opportunity. So, and shit is always cycling. So apply earlier than you think, probably. That's first piece of advice. For your resume, let's see if I can get my resume up here real quick. When you start putting your resume together, go to Docs. How the fuck is Google? The fuck is the fucking thing? Google Docs. Let's see. Okay. My current resume, and this is more or less the same template and the same, very similar resume that I've used since I started. So I wish maybe I can look for my original, like my first resume. But what I would do, just go to like Google Docs, find a job, find like a resume template. That's what I did, and start filling shit out. One thing I did when I first started is I had on the side here. Now I just have like list of skills. But oh fuck. When I first started, because I had a lot of white space and I didn't have open source contributions or a live stream or tech. I didn't have any of this shit. Fuck. So instead, what I put here is I divided my skills into like comfortable skills, and that was like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, React, and all that shit. And then uncomfortable skills, which are like pieces of technology I was interested in and had dabbled with, but things that like, and things I want to list on my resume that I'd be like very willing to work with or be interested in, but things that like, if it comes up in an interview, I might not know every detail about. So in there I had like, I can't remember at the time, but like maybe Golang, which is a back-end language that I was fucking with. Everyone knows Golang now. But like Golang, Jest, like testing, because I wasn't very comfortable with it, but I could kind of do it. So I would do something like that where you can like list out things that you might not be like, know every little detail about, but just to show that you're interested in learning. And then otherwise I just put like realistically what my job experience was, which was English teacher. So my resume wasn't great, and I don't think you need your resume should be decent enough, but like when you're first starting out, you're limited. There's a ton of shit you're just not gonna have a lot of shit on there. So do your best. You could research it and add in other stuff, and you definitely want to 100% put in like projects. Like throw in your GitHub, and your GitHub should be really active, ideally. It might not matter, but that's something that seems very, very easy to do. Just commit something in Git like every day, and your GitHub will start to, you get like the green little bars and shit. Let's show you mine real quick. But basically Git does, oh man, wow, that's the longest period of blank time since I started. But every day you like commit, you get these little green bars. You see my shit's just gonna be going fucking back for quite a while. But this is like when I first really started out, this was me right here. And I got my first job right around April. But you want to like, that's something that might be worth doing. And then definitely link to your GitHub from your resume 100%. But like I said, your resume is not going to be great. So do your best with it. And then the next step is start applying. And one thing that this is definitely coming from the world of like Dave Brudner's opinion, but when you first start out, or even when you first start out, like anytime, when you're applying to jobs, keep in mind you're not going to get an answer most of the time for most of these jobs. And you should not invest much at all into any application you're doing. You should be going for breadth, not depth. You should be thinking quantity, not quality for applications. So it's gonna like you're kind of looking for a home run to some extent. Like you, one of the weirder things that seems to be a big thing there. Firstly, networking is kind of silly. I don't know. It might be valuable. It might help you find a job, but I've never done it through that. I don't know that many people who have when they first started. It can be a good thing, but like, let's be real here. We're not all networkers. Like, it's hard for a lot of people, myself included, to just like walk into a room like a tech meetup and just start meeting people and shit, especially to the point where like you're comfortable enough with them that they'll offer you. I don't know. It might be doable. You might be able to get yourself like really ingrained in the community that way, but I didn't do that. What I basically did is I went to LinkedIn, make a LinkedIn, 100%. Definitely have a LinkedIn. It's as important as your resume. It's almost the same. And just use like my LinkedIn now is pretty shitty, but you really need one. And then from here, I'll tell you exactly how I found every single job that I found. I go here, I look for any one of these sort of titles here, and let's just say I want to do some JavaScript shit. Click on there, and what you're looking for is this lovely LinkedIn feature called Easy Apply, and this is going to let you click a link here. Let's apply to whatever Grubhub right now. You like upload a resume one time. It'll save all your answers, which is dope, and then go through, submit app, done. That's it. And then you go to the next one. So this is how I got all three of my jobs, all with fantastic companies, is just by doing this. I didn't use any other service. Man, these are like, I'm giving some secrets, some gems right now. Oh shit, I just disconnected my mic. This is like, I hope people don't start like, this doesn't catch on too much. But point is, I think the core point here is like apply quickly and then don't even like, and then that's it. Don't worry about it unless they call back. Because most of them are not going, you're not going to hear from, you won't even get like a no from most of them. You're not going to hear from most of them. But do this like a lot. Like hundreds of times. Like when I first started out, I would do this for like 30 to 50 jobs a day. And like I said, most of them aren't going to hit you back, but you start to get calls back. You will. Assuming your resume doesn't suck. Put a picture on your resume. I don't know if I threw that on there. That might be helpful. My resume sucks. Like I'm not great at, or at least that's not really what I'm great at, writing resumes. To be fair, once you get on the other side and you start seeing the resumes that come in, it's pretty fucking gnarly. Most resumes are abysmal. Like the competition here is shittier than you think. And if you just have like a decent, well-spoken resume, you're already ahead of the curve to some extent. But yeah, I would do LinkedIn Easy Apply. There's other, like Indeed people use, and there's other services and other like, job application things. But I think that you want to just cast a wide net. You don't want to really invest too much in one job. Common advice I've heard aside from networking is like to find a person who works at that company and just message them. That's fucking batshit. Don't do that. That's bizarre. I've gotten those messages and I just think it's kind of a weird thing to do. And aside from that, you want to be thinking about applying to lots of jobs, so you want to like limit effort on each application, because most of them, like I said, they're not going to respond to you anyway. They're not even going to give you the time. They're not going to they're not even going to tell you no. Or they might, but I would say like don't. It seems like people like apply to like one or two jobs and then they just wait to hear back, and that's nuts. Like don't do that. Apply to like. It's a numbers game. Apply to many jobs. Recruiters are doing the same ass shit. Don't feel guilty about that either. I've talked to some other people about that, and they said that they would feel bad about doing that, but you gotta like really look out for yourself and like just go for it. Be a little selfish. So I would do that, and then let's say eventually you start getting calls, you start taking interviews. I'm really shitty at writing resumes, but I'm phenomenal at interviewing. I've had 5 interviews for tech jobs in my life. I've gotten offers for 4 of them, and the only one I didn't was my very, very first one. Since then, I tend to always get offers. I've never read. There's a ton of resources for getting better at interviewing. I've like never really touched them. Things that come to mind are what the fuck is it? Like the coding interview. What the fuck is that book called? Cracking the Coding. I think that's what it is. Cracking the Coding Interview. Yeah, this guy here. This is a really common book for people to read when they're first starting out, and it's just like a bunch of potential interview questions. And I think you definitely should like Google, JavaScript interview questions, front developer interview questions, or if you're back-end dev, same thing, and do some of those. But I think unless you're trying to get a job at a very, very high, like unless you're going for like a Google Amazon job, you don't need to know like data structures and shit. I've never been asked about anything like that. The interview questions that you get asked are generally relatively simple front end things. They're really are JavaScript things that you're like I've never been. It'll be like sort this array of objects by their name or by like this property, or it'll be like reverse a string. Might be a first one. I tell you what, every interview I've ever done, they've asked about loose and strict equality operators, which is one that I don't know why that comes up all the time, but that's like one of the very simple ones. But all these things, I think that you learn just by coding on your own. Like I was just coding all the time, so I never really I was never concerned about that stuff. If anything, I was kind of excited to do it. You want to be obviously you want to be like calm in your interviews, like be a chill person. A lot of times the interviewers themselves are nervous. And I think it could be, it's like good to, you almost want to put them at ease. Like it might be their first time interviewing somebody, or it might be like, there's so many things going on in your interviewer's life, and that's a huge part of the interview that you can't really control. But when you're in there, you can be like, put them at ease, make some jokes if you're a funny person, don't be too weird and shit. Like have a normal conversation. And if you could like crack through to that, I think that's gonna put you in a really good place. Be conversational, like talk about what you're doing. That's why I started streaming when I did way back when, is so I could get more comfortable talking about like what I'm doing as I'm doing it to help for interviews and like whiteboarding shit. It's not a big deal if you get one of the questions wrong. My first job at Principal, I got one of their interview questions wrong. They're going to be fine with it. You just want to, especially for your first job, you want to show that you're like a passionate person. You're learning all the time. And that like you're really into this. Have some of your own opinions too. I remember when I interviewed for Principal, I started talking about how I don't use semicolons anymore because I read in a medium.com article that semicolons are obsolete now in JavaScript world. And I in a funny way, I brought this up, and I think it like helped with levity and shit. Other things. It's interesting. All of my interviews have been done online. I've never gone in for an interview. That is definitely true. Yeah, I was just thinking if that was true. So, like, especially in 2020 COVID, more often than not, you're probably going to be, sitting at home on your computer on a Skype call or on some call with somebody else doing it. So make sure you have like good microphone helps, good audio helps, good internet connection is going to help. And then don't dress like a schlub, but don't wear a fucking suit. Especially if it's like a video interview online at home, I would wear like, for me personally, I just wear a hoodie. Like I wouldn't, like, don't go nuts getting dressed up. Also, I think that's kind of weird, to be honest. If I saw somebody like get like massive dressed up for an interview, I think that it'd be kind of weird, especially in 2020 COVID. If you're going into an office to interview, different story. But if you're at home, then I think that you want to be like chill, you know. Obviously, don't have like weird shit going. Don't be like too far with it, but like be comfortable. You definitely want to ask questions about that. You want to ask them about the company too. You should be pretty loose about your first job. It shouldn't be like you like can only work at a place that's going to give you X amount of money, that does this tech stack and serves you catered lunches. Like you need to be a little bit you don't need to screen too much, but you do need to screen. And things you should screen for, let me tell you something. Firstly, what should you screen for looking for your first company? I would think, honestly, it's really common to get into startups for your first job. I would say, like, look for something corporate, honestly, or established startup. You don't want to be working at a company, in my opinion, you don't want to work at a company with like 2 or 3 other people and one of them is like the owner and financier. I think that those are the kinds of jobs where like you don't get paid on time, or weird shit happens, or like the company just closes like a month after you start, all kinds of weird shit. I would say don't avoid that kind of a thing. Avoid, like, my first job offer was for a cryptocurrency startup company with like 5 or 6 employees, and I passed on them for Principal Financial Group because they have like 50,000 employees, whatever they have. They're fucking huge. And about a month later, I was just curious, and I went on the cryptocurrency company's website, and they're being investigated by fraud by the SEC. I feel like shit like that in startup world is not that fucking rare. So I would look for corporate jobs if you can. But again, you just want to get a job too, so I wouldn't screen too hard for this. I think for money, let's talk money. Salary or whatever. Fucking goddamn it. Why? And this is definitely going to be different for everyone. If you're in a position where you just need money, you just need a job, then, you know, your standard, your whatever, what you might, the amount you might accept obviously is going to change. But you don't, like, I really feel like anything less than, like, if it's less than 60K for a salary, question it. Like, you should not be getting an offer for anything less than 60K. If it's less than 60K, I almost feel like it's not even a full role. Like, it's like almost like an apprenticeship or something else, or you're just getting scammed straight up. I do feel like there are scams out there. I've never really encountered them. I've gotten a couple weirdish offers through LinkedIn, but you could screen them pretty quickly. And these are the kinds of, this is like almost falls into this. You get, like, if you're getting hit off by a one-off dude just to build a thing for him, oof, I don't know about that, man. I would say that. I'm gonna say, for a quick caveat, I'm not a freelance dev, and that's a different world. So you can probably get into this. I know that that's really common for people when they first start. But I don't really know about that world. It's kind of different, and I can't offer advice on it. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But you will probably, when you first start out, those offers might come in as you start like advertising, and maybe you take them, maybe you don't. I don't know. I would say you really want to get like a salary job at a company though. That's like the goal, or a contract. Like the other thing is, Well, let's keep going this. Yeah, anything less than 60K, question it. You're probably looking like 75 to 90 is probably where you want to be, but that's I almost feel like that's you get what you get. I think that the other stuff is more important. 60K is probably the minimum. I would not have accepted a job. Maybe even 50, but you want to be careful about accepting like less money. So I'll kind of leave it there. The other thing that's kind of a thing is, do you want to be salary or a contractor? And this is definitely another one of those things that you're not going to know about unless you're coming from an industry that does contractors, or you just, I don't know how you would know about this in the IT world if you hadn't like read about it or some shit, or worked as a contractor, worked in the industry, or come from an industry that has a similar setup. But a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, but really even mid-sized companies, have contractors on staff in addition to like their salaried employees. And contractors tend to make it, they make an hourly rate, no benefits, so, which means like no health insurance, bonus structure. You know, like other stuff too. Yeah, so hourly rate, which means, by the way, no time off. There's no paid time off. So if you're a contractor at almost every company, when you get off for Christmas, you don't go in, you don't get paid. So the way that balances out, though, is that your hourly rate, though, should be high. And to start out, I was at $49.50 an hour. That was my first offer at Principal, and I think you should probably be aiming for something in that range. It's hard to evaluate. It's hard to directly compare a contract offer to a salaried offer for a number of reasons, but it's usually it's like 2/3. Like I think the base formula. Let's do this. Base formula for comparing contractor to salary compensation is to be contractor hourly times 40 times 52. So that's like if you could work 40 hours a week for every week of the year, what would that be? And then divide that by like 2/3 or something. And that's probably roughly what that's like roughly equal, something like that. But either way, if you get an offer as a job as a contractor, that's still dope. And I got my first job as a contractor, and there's a lot of benefits to being a contractor. I'll probably talk about this in a different video at some point. But keep in mind, as a contractor, if the company you're working for has an on-call schedule, which is common, you'll probably be excluded from it. So you won't have to it's unlikely that you're going to get a call at midnight on like Saturday or Friday night about some shit that's broken because you're off the clock. And once you close your computer, you're done because you're hourly. So anytime you're working, you're supposed to bill for it. There's also some tax implications here and shit like that, but that's kind of trivial. And then I think other things to look for your first job, or other things to screen for, is what are your responsibilities? And are you what tech are you going to work with? Who are you going to work with? I think these two are both really big. One thing to keep in mind as you're looking at jobs is it's not uncommon, or it's actually pretty common, for you to get signed on as this will might happen. You'll get signed on as a front-end developer and told you'll be working in React, and then you'll find out that all the new stuff is in React, but all the old shit is in spaghetti fucking jQuery, and you spend half your day doing that. There's a good chance that something like that might happen, so you do want to ask about what tech do your legacy apps use, if you have any legacy apps, which they will. Legacy being like just old. I would say, like, are you expected to do back-end work at all? Are you expected to work on CI pipeline things? These are like kind of little things that might matter, but what you're screening for is you don't want, like, you might not want a job where you're being asked to do all kinds of crazy fucking shit on a daily basis. So you might want to be like, you just want to know what the day-to-day is going to look like. And if they have, like, my concern would be for somebody is they get a job off, or they're in an interview for a job, everything's going good, the role's for a front-end dev, but, like, when you get there, you find out, oh shit, you have to know quite a bit of PHP and that, like, or something like that, and that's what you end up working all the time. I don't know. It's something for my last, like, when I first started at Principal, they were using a framework called Backbone, which was a little oldish at the time, but still doable. And they were moving to React, which is one of the reasons they hired me. But they also had a number of very old apps written in a language called XSLT, and they were some of the worst apps that you could possibly work in. And I feel like it would, like, not be too uncommon for you as a new developer to go to a company and then they just give you, like, all their really, really shitty XSLT apps to work on, or some nonsense like that. Whereby now you're not using something new, so you're not learning as much as you could, or and it just sucks balls to work in. So something to think about. You just want to, like, get a feel for them. Like, you want to ask them. It's hard because you don't know what questions to ask. Now, if I go into like my last job, I grilled the fuck out of them because I knew all the things I did not want to do in the next job. I knew, like, what I was looking for in terms of what I wasn't looking for. It's really helpful to know those things, but, you know, when you're first starting out, you might not know, because how the fuck would you? You also, like, who are you going? This is really. This might be one of the biggest things. Like, feel what your rapport. I'm gonna extend this by. We're almost done for the hour, but I'm gonna extend by a little bit just because I'm, like, rolling today. I'm feeling a little better, and I'm just blabbering right now. I think that this is the 4th stream. I think last Wednesday was the best one, the weed addiction one, and the other ones I've been so caffeinated that I haven't had a very clear vision for what I wanted to talk about. So I think I need to clarify that going forward. But I'm just thinking about, like, this would be better if I had a very strict outlined list of things to talk about rather than me just freestyling, because I'm getting sidetracked a bit. But think about who you're going to work with. So you want to feel what your rapport is like with the interviewer. So more often than not, the person that's interviewing you is probably going to be a senior dev, or they're going to be, at least one of them is, or they're going to be, like, a manager. And managers really set the tone for like, teams and orgs. So if you get along with your manager, if you're in, like, this interview talking to your manager, talking to senior dev, same with senior devs, they set the tone. And if you're feeling like you like them and you could get along with them, you could work with them a lot, chances are you'll like everybody else on the team too. Companies tend to have, like, a certain identity, and it starts at the top. The other thing is, whoever's interviewing you, at least one of the people, I mean, depends on the interview process, but most likely you're going to be interviewing with someone that you'll be working with a ton. So you want to be, like, you want to feel like your interviewer is somebody that you can work with. And you especially when you're starting out, you want to feel like your interviewer, who's probably this, like I said, manager, senior dev, who's probably going to be, like, mentoring you to some extent, more likely than not. You want to feel like there's someone you can learn from. Like, your first job, you're learning. Okay, you're like, your first year, you're just learning. You're not going to be able to be too effective. You're not going to be able to deliver too much value. You still will in subtler ways, But you want to get like if you what you really want is you want like someone who can mentor you, someone who could teach you. And it doesn't have to be somebody you work with every day and pair program with every second, but like at a company, hopefully you'll find somebody who you can like learn from and feel comfortable with and like and just like grow as dev. Every company I've worked with has had outstanding developers, and most of them are very, very willing to teach you. Even the ones who are like, I talked about a guy my last week who was a very, very toxic developer, very, very talented, but very, very toxic. And even this person who is so mean to like so many people was so fucking nice to me and would teach me all kinds of cool shit just because I was like very nice to him, and he could see that like be someone who cares. Like he could see that I cared very much so and was very interested in like learning and getting better as a dev. And I think that people really gravitate towards that. So you want to cultivate that a bit and use it and like if the person interviewing you is not very doesn't seem like somebody that you like can learn a ton from, you might want to consider that if you have other options. If you're just trying to get your first job doing anything, then and that's not a bad way to go, then just take whatever you can. I am kind of talking here like you'll have a ton of offers, but chances are you won't. So you might want to like, you know, not screen too hard and just take the first job, especially in the market as it is right now. But you do want to think about this, and hopefully you land somewhere that does have like people who are willing to teach you. And like I said, for sure there will be. I would be very surprised if there was companies that like that wasn't a thing. But you want to like just kind of feel it out to some extent. Like for every one of my interviews for the companies that I've landed with, I kind of knew in the interview, like you could feel when it's going well. And I knew that each one of my interviews shit was going pretty well. I knew they liked me, and like I got a good feeling about every one of these companies, especially the people. My second job, there was a bit of there were some bumps in the road, but I really, really liked the people, and that's why I took the job. And I think that like, yeah, when you're interviewing, it's almost like they're screening you, but you're screening them too. Even if you're not like outwardly rejecting them, you might just not be into it, and that might not be why you're like fucking up or something. But yeah, you definitely want to screen a little bit. You want like ask them about their company culture. Like people want to talk about their jobs and their companies. And it's not very, I'll tell you what else, it's not really uncommon for me to like talk in an interview about something, and then the interviewer just gets caught up talking about like the company, like company gossip really quickly. And I feel like if you're there, then you're pretty set. A couple other things that are coming up that do come up. And this is one that, so I've given my, let me make sure no one's said anything in chat real quick. I don't think anyone has, but I haven't been watching this shit at all. Cool, it doesn't look like it. Fuck, what was I gonna say? So scattered today. Oh yeah, so one thing about my that lovely gem about LinkedIn Easy Apply before, what will happen is you'll get emails back, and you'll have no idea what the company is or what the role is or anything. Like it'll be like from, you know, paperbag.com emailed you about scheduling an interview or something for the role you applied for. Like you'll get an email like that, and you're like, I don't know what I don't know what the fuck this company is or what the role is. You know, it's like you might have to go back and look. But one of the very common questions that you will get at some point, probably in an interview, is like, why do you want to work at this company? And I'll give you some generic answers you can use. But this is it's interesting, especially when you're first starting out, because truthfully, you want, like, if you're being honest, like, you want to work at the company to make money. Like, it's not really that complicated, and the product or what that company does for your first job probably isn't that important to you. But you still want to like spin some shit here. You can't go in and say that, or you can. I think I did that for my first. I did that at Principal, but you want to like you want to set yourself apart a little bit. So you could do research on a company before you go in and like find a reason why. You might want to know that before going in. That could be helpful, but you'll definitely get asked this shit. But what you want to do for a question like this is you want to think about what their product is. What is this company's product? And what are they delivering to their end users? And why is that cool or important? That's a way to break. This is like a way to break it down. So if I was to like look at, and also you want to be a good bullshit artist for interviewing. Let's be real here. Be able to like talk at length about anything. That shit is really helpful. But if I was to like, let's say I'm applying, doing my easy apply shit. I want to be a React developer this time. Oh, my other tip. I have one more tip after this. One more really good tip that just came up that I'll write down before I keep going. Okay, we'll talk about this one next. Well, I gotta sneeze. Like right on the edge of sneezing here. Fuck. I don't think I'm good. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna apply for a job at Our Family Wizard. Whatever the fuck this is. It's co-parenting and is well recognized by the broader family law community. Okay, so it's like they do some legal shit. Okay. See, if you read this and then I would definitely go back and read like the job descriptions before your interview though, for sure. I usually don't, but now looking at this, whew, you should. And another side note, when you're looking for jobs, I should have mentioned this earlier. When you're doing this LinkedIn easy apply shit, you want to screen. You don't want to just screen your interview. You want to screen like these job descriptions. If they're written like fucking ass, like if it's just a big block of fucking huge text saying, you need to know JSON, you need to know this, you need to know that, you need to know that, 12 years experience of this, and it doesn't even talk about what the company is or like anything else except what you need to know. Fuck that noise. Like, good companies have good job postings. I'll put it that way. Every company that I've applied to and worked for has had a really good job posting that's been in good English, written by a human being and not a robot. I would say definitely look for that. Let's see if I can find like a really shitty one. These are all pretty good. This is really good. If they start getting into required skills and like specifics of coding and stuff, especially if it's like relevant to JavaScript front end, I'm usually like, this is the shit, because it sounds like HR is actually communicating with the hiring developers. But anyway, you'll I don't know. I can't find any right now. These are all actually pretty decent listings, but think about your listings. And this is also where you can start screening. Like if for old tech, if they're talking about SOAP or XML and shit like that, run the fuck away. But anyway, so we're applying to Our Family Wizard. We applied, they got back to us, and now I'm getting ready for the interview. So I'm gonna think about like, why should I want to work here, and shit like that. This is great. This is actually a really, really great listing. So some things that I'm thinking about here for myself, part of this is also knowing what you want, and then picking things out from their job description that, you know, are like match up with that. So something that is worth asking about might be, hey, they've been around for 19 years and you're looking for an established company. So I would say let's do this example and we can just write some shit down. Our family wizard. We might actually go out till like 10 o'clock because I'm having fun doing this and I don't want to start actual work yet. This is dope. I have so much fun with these conversations and streams and shit. I really fucking liking doing this. Wednesday's gonna be a good one, by the way. Wednesday's gonna be the shit. But anyway, if I was to talk about why I want to apply, or why do you want to work here at this place, I would say firstly they're a mid-sized company, which is what I'm looking for in terms of number of employees. Mid-sized companies are fucking dope. That's like kind of ideal. And you're looking at like 11 to 50 employees. And you could elaborate why you're looking for mid-size. You can talk about like, been around for 19 years. I'm looking for something established, for an established company, not a fledgling startup or a bulky corporate environment. Bulky, huge corporate. And I would talk about, and then really you want, I mean, for something like this, you definitely want to talk about their product. And I think it's actually a good, like, to be fair, you should be excited about their product. You should be excited about what they're building and shit. It's going to make your job so much more rewarding. One of my issues with Principal in my first job is that I was working, it wasn't rewarding. It felt like what I was making was either being tossed in the trash, not used by anybody, was misguided in some way, and the top-down perspective from like whoever's setting the requirements for this thing is just off, or any number of things. You could just, and also you're just making shit for this big fucking like insurance company that doesn't, it's very, very bland, and it doesn't feel like it didn't feel like I was like providing value for anybody. I was just getting paid paycheck basically. You don't want to, and that's fine, to some extent when you're starting out, because you're so excited you don't care about that shit. But it is really cool to work for a company that's doing something that you find meaningful. And most shit I think is pretty meaningful. Even like doing stuff for insurance, like for Principal, like the stuff is like helping people manage their 401k and their financial future. It's still like you can derive some positivity from that or whatever. Man, I actually want to apply for this job. They're fucking great. But if I was looking at this, I would say I like their focus on humility as a value. And then in the interview, I would talk about why I think that's important, especially as a developer. Humility and empathy, because they mentioned that too. Yeah, this is like, I bet you this is a really good company to work for. Companies that mention empathy in their job description or just talk about empathy as a value, that's the shit. Those are usually going to be good companies to work for. Let's see what else they have here. And then the other product. Oh, I'm getting a little hungry. Let's see what else you got. See, I'm looking at, I still don't totally understand what their product is. It's a co-parenting application. Let's see if we can just like Google it and find out a little bit. Well, I have no idea. So I guess that this is like a tool for divorced parents or separated parents to somehow, I don't know. I don't really get it, but I asked them about what their product actually is. I would mention that. Like ideally you could say something about how important you could talk about how like important their product is or how much value it's delivering to users and shit. But yeah, you want to have this dialed in. But if I got this question about why do you want to work at this place for this company, I would say shit like this. And then I wouldn't, in this case, I would ask about the product. And then as they're telling me, I would feign interest or express interest. Yeah. Like I would talk about, for something like this, how, you know, parenting in 2020 or in like contemporary times is like very non-traditional type stuff happening all over the place. And an app like this can provide a lot of security and value and comfort for people who are doing blah, 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 blah. Something like that. But that's usually a question that'll come up, and it's a good one to answer well. But I'll tell you, if you fuck up all the JavaScript questions, it doesn't really matter why you want to work at the company. So, not as important. I think that the way I answered this question for my last job is why I got it, though. I fucking crushed it. Okay. Last thing I'm going to talk about, and then I'm gone. I'm going to talk about this for like 2 minutes, and then I'm gone. Is the idea that, and not everyone is this fortunate, for your first job, if you're limited to a specific geographical area, that's going to change a lot of shit. And my LinkedIn Easy Apply bullshit is not going to be as helpful for that because you have limited options. If you are a young person and you're learning how to code, I would strongly suggest you do not limit your searching just to your like local region at that time. And I realize that is not possible for so many people, and it does suck. Like if you don't have that advantage, then it's going to be harder and take more time. Hopefully you're in like a major city, but if you're out in like the middle of Oklahoma, it's going to be tough. You could apply for, I guess remote opportunities are like around more than ever. I do think, I mean, it is what it is. Going into an office for your first job is ideal though. You'll learn way more, way quicker. But things being what they are, good chance you'll be a remote worker too, which is fine. But if you have the ability, unless there's like a really good reason for you staying where you are, and that better be like family or something else. It shouldn't just be because that's where your friends are or some shit. You should be very, very open to moving somewhere because you will find a job much faster if that's the case. And this is like probably the biggest piece of advice I could give. Consider applying anywhere. But that's it for today. I definitely have more thoughts on the subject, and sorry this got very, very scattered and just jointed, I felt like. It'll be interesting to listen, to watch it and see how this fucking went. But yeah, overall, I would say big takeaways for this, for when to apply for your first job, is you can't really apply too early, but probably in the 3 to 5 months thing. I started applying when I was 4 months in. Have a resume that has some projects on it and shit you can show. Know your basic stuff. Know your basic interview questions, but don't go wild just teaching yourself interview questions. Write bigger apps and like bigger software, because that's like the real shit. When you get an interview, when you start getting interviews, consider screening the company a bit, making sure that they fit you as well. It's more, I see interviews more as like a collaborative thing, where it's like you're not just interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing you. For your first job, you might not have that mentality, and that's fine. Contractor or salary, either one is fine. Don't work for that random ass dude on LinkedIn that's hitting you up to build his car website. Real story. Ask what you'll be working on. Make sure that the company, if you get along with your interviewer, that's great. Try and be chill in interviews. And then that's it. Just make sure that you have your why do you want to work here shit figured out to some extent. Although you could go in without knowing anything like that, and they don't really give too much of a fuck, depending. But it can, like, drive shit home. Just be open to, like, especially if your first job, just be open to, like, I want to learn. I want to get better. And like, be excited and shit. But yeah, I'm going to say that is it. That was a good hour, 15 minutes there. Otherwise, we'll come back on Wednesday for a personal topic that's pretty fucking dope, and I'm really excited for. And if you're watching, have a good day. Other than that,